Forget the badass Viking history. Current year Norway isn't just the country that unleashed Dustborn, possibly the wokest game ever made upon the world. It is also so hostile to innovation, business and free enterprise that Elon Musk himself is shocked by it. Since I just so happen to be Norwegian, and I already exposed the dysfunction of the Norwegian gaming scene and how something like Dustborn could ever get funded at taxpayer expense, I've been flooded with requests to comment on and do a deep dive into this. Has Norway really become that bad? To which I say, no, it is much worse. Let's dive in to the madness of the current anti-business, anti-success, and all in all, anti-win Norwegian tax model. This video is sponsored by Incogni. Some have created an impression of Norway as a socialist utopia with free healthcare, high standards of living, public safety, and all sorts of other goodies. This, however, is not entirely indicative of reality in a nation that is so politically mismanaged that it has shut down the bulk of its industries, ruined its own power market, seen the value of its currency plummet, opened its doors to mass welfare immigration that has resulted in crime, sexual assaults, and such flagrant anti-Semitism that a large portion of the country's already very small Jewish population has already left, and they're not the only ones. Since 2022 in particular, responding to a new tax regime from the current coalition government between Labour, this would be the sister party of the Democrats in the US and Labour in the UK, and the Centrist Party, the most wealthy industry owners, the most established entrepreneurs, as well as the most promising innovators have left the country as well, usually in favor of Switzerland, fleeing a tax model aimed at redistribution of wealth, but which in practice punishes both success and innovation, in some cases by not just taking all revenue in tax, but even more than that. Then, when the very individuals they targeted with these tax changes started fleeing, they urgently implemented an exit tax aimed at fleecing anyone intent on leaving, rich or poor. We're about to get into that, and everything else Elon Musk referred to as crazy. But before we do that, have you noticed how so many of the online ads you come across seem oddly personal to you? Well, there's a reason for that, and it doesn't stop with ads, because that's where the spam emails and maybe even automated robocalls begin, and it only gets worse from there. If you ever signed up for a newsletter, a website, or some other service, then chances are your data was resold without you ever agreeing to it. There's a shadow industry of data brokers aggregating, buying, and reselling personal data like your full name, email address, phone number, home address, SSN, shopping habits, online alias, employment history, financial information, and much, much more. And as valuable as that information may be for those trading in it, all you get out of it, of course, is spam, and even that is a best-case scenario. In the US in particular, your data may end up in public search sites, and health insurance companies are known to use some of that data as determinants of health, meaning your documented online activity may actually increase your rates. There is also the risk that your data sooner or later will be leaked in a data breach, where it's made freely available for outright criminals, putting you at additional risk for more targeted scams and even identity theft, where loans may be taken out in your name. The good news, though, is that no matter how they obtained it, you have the right to request that these data brokers delete the information they have about you. The bad news is that there are hundreds of them, and each and every one of them will try every trick to weasel out of deleting your data. And worse still, even if they do, there's nothing preventing them from collecting it again. The really good news then is that Incogni, this video sponsor, can take care of this for you. Incogni helps you protect your privacy and take your personal data off the market by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf, demand your personal data be removed, and plow through their objections as they come. and better still, they'll send repeat removal requests in case they should get a hold of your data again. And best of all, the whole process is automated. All you have to do is create an account, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf, and kick back and relax while they do the work for you, keeping you up to date with the progress every step of the way. Since this video is sponsored by Incogni, we naturally have a deal for you. Use our code MIDNIGHT at the link in the description and you'll get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. So head down to the description and get your data protected now. With that, let's move on to Elon Musk and the madness of Norway. Let's begin with how many would first have been exposed to this, namely by Elon Musk on November 16th, retweeting a story with the caption, "Wow, this is crazy," in reference to a tweet from Alex Svanevik, which read, "Here's how insane things have gotten in Norway. The Socialist Party has a wall of shame in their office with rich people who have left Norway due to the outrageous taxes they're now being charged. Who do you find on that wall? Startup founders like Fredrik Haga, the man behind the crypto app Dune, who was forced to leave the country because he was paying all of his income in taxes. When the Soviet Union is becoming the role model of your country, time to GTFO. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's start with this socialist wall of shame, a story which is from the financial section of Dagbladet, the most left-leaning of all of Norway's major newspapers, all of which are left-leaning. The only thing that separates them are how left-leaning they are. This story then features an interview with Kirsti Bergstø, the leader of the political party Socialist Left. Yes, that is the actual name of the party, the Socialist Left, I kid you not. They are not in government at the moment, but a party that the ruling Labour and centrist parties rely on for parliamentary backing, which in turn gives them influence. On her office wall, she has clippings of rich Norwegians that have left the past couple of years, and the Socialist Party leader takes a gleeful delight in entrepreneurs and other successful business owners complaining about the high tax level and them leaving the country, telling the publication that this gives her drive, inspiration, and at times a good laugh. She says, over time, ever more extreme statements from rich men has been allowed to take up more space in the public discourse. This only goes to show how powerful their lobby is, and that they live in an alternate reality. That's some grade A gaslighting right there, because having a powerful lobby also implies having some level of influence, but if they did, they wouldn't have left their home country and its taxation regime in the first place. As for living in an alternate reality, keep that in mind as we move forward here. This socialist is accusing entrepreneurs of living in an alternate reality. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that assessment as we move on here. She continues, "I don't go to work for these people, these rich people. I go to work for regular people." The wealth gap is increasing, and the wealthiest have increased their fortune by 63%, while everyone else are worse off since the lockdowns. You wouldn't think so with how these people are whining and moaning, she says. Note that she doesn't say one word about why the wealth gap has increased, which in no small part is due to the mass welfare immigration, as well as the extreme economic mismanagement by the government and the Norwegian central bank. Nor does she say anything about what they're going to do for the regular working people, who are worse off because the economy is, shall we say, not all it could be. Instead, the focus appears to be to punish anyone who, on paper, appears to be successful, even if most of those who appear successful haven't increased their wealth by 63%. And many do not have the means needed to pay the extortionate tax fees that are suddenly demanded of them, disposable or freely available, because to put it in simple terms, they are at times taxed real money for assets and income that only exists on paper. The taxation system is complex, and a multi-video series would be required to go through it all, so for brevity, let's look at some concrete examples. In response to Elon Musk calling out the leader of the socialist left and her wall of shame as crazy, one of the more centrist Norwegian publications, Nettavisen, published a piece stating, "Elon Musk is right. taking delight in rich business owners fleeing the country is indeed crazy. While other countries go to great lengths to attract investors and entrepreneurs, the leader of the socialist left brings impulses from some of the least successful politicians in history. Somewhat ironically, she acts like a mix of the Venezuelan socialist politician Hugo Chavez and the East German head of state Erich Honecker. Honecker is renowned for fencing in the population and refusing them to leave the country. Hugo Chavez is known for having wasted the oil fortune and scaring away commercial enterprise. Let's look at what the current Norwegian government is doing in order to achieve this, and begin with the ordinary income tax, which for most people in 9-to-5 jobs, or 8-to-4 as is the case in Norway, pay around 30-something% of their gross earnings in income tax. If you're a business owner that live from the proceeds of your business though, you'll be worse off because your income will be taxed several times over. As of now, and I emphasize that for a reason, because it may be about to change, but as of now, a company can move its proceeds from various investments, its unrealized capital gains, from one investment to the other without being taxed for it. The moment the investments are realized though, tax is due several times over. The aforementioned Nettavisen brings forth an example of a company that has profited 100 million Norwegian krona, roughly $10 million, so just remove a zero for a quick dollar conversion. From that 100 million, the company has to pay 22 million in company tax, which leaves a net company profit of 78 million, but these are still in the company. If the owner wants to extract this money from the company to spend on non-company expenses, like his living expenses, then 37.8% of that will be deducted, after which the company owner gets to keep 48.5 million after tax. In other words, more than half of the company's profits is stripped away in taxes before the owner gets to keep any of it. The central premise of this regime isn't unique to Norway, but the high rates means any business owners already in Norway has good reason to look for other places to set up shop instead, while foreign companies have good reason to stay away. It gets worse though, because Norway has something most other countries don't, namely a tax on fortune, which is completely unrelated to income. The Norwegian fortune tax is calculated based on the value of your house, your car, your bank deposits, and every other asset in your name minus your debt. If that number is more than 1.7 million krona, or $170,000 to keep the conversion simple, you have to pay a minimum of 1% in fortune tax in addition to all other taxes. What sets this tax apart is that what will drive it up is the tax value of your real estate, plus the paper values of any holdings you might have. That I will get back to in a little bit, so for the moment, let's focus on real estate. If you're a regular worker and you've mostly paid off your house mortgage, this rarely translates to more than a few $100s per year, but that's still real money you have to pay on the paper value of your house. If the housing market suddenly collapses and you end up selling your house at a much lower price than the tax value you've been taxed at for years already, you ain't getting that money back. That's one thing if you're an individual, but if you're in a business that involves more real estate, this becomes an issue. The real problem isn't real estate though, but if you own or invest in a new company. So even if you're not rich, if you're just a regular schmuck that has an idea for a killer company, there's no need to feel left out. The current Norwegian government have you in their crosshairs as well. The initial quote tweet from Elon Musk that we started with referenced Fredrik Haga, the founder of the crypto app Dune, who left Norway because he was paying all of his income in taxes. Not a third, not one half, all. How can that be, you wonder? Well, let's see. In an opinion piece titled "The Taxes That Are Killing Our Future," published in the newspaper VG, Norwegian artist turned entrepreneur Anine Stang wrote, "Many have bought into the claims that the fortune and exit taxes, and I'll get back to that one, only affect the wealthiest of the wealthy. I bought into this as well, until I started my own company. referencing the comments from the leader of the socialist left that she doesn't go to work for these abominable rich people, but for regular working people. Anine Stang argued that the people who actually create jobs for the regular working people aren't themselves regular working people. So how is the country supposed to incentivize more innovation and job creation when those who succeed at this are practically labeled as enemies of society by prominent politicians? She writes, "We hear Norwegian politicians say we need more entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs. But how is that supposed to happen when instead of support, we're met with unique Norwegian taxes that cut us off at the knees?" The fortune tax demands harms entrepreneurs by demanding tax payments on values that only exist on paper, not in reality. If you have ambitions of building a company that will grow, you need investors that will buy a stake in your company. And if you, as the founder, are to retain a controlling share, a value must be assigned the company, and frequently a high value. Take the Swedish startup Estrid, where the value was assigned as 1 billion after 1 year of operation, and this evaluation was used to secure 100 million in investments by selling 10% of the company. This cash influx facilitated a fast growth, job creation, gain market shares, and build a success. And here then comes the difference the Norwegian fortune tax makes, because unlike in Sweden, where the 100 million would have gone wholesale towards actually growing the company, in Norway, a chunk of that investment would trigger fortune tax for the owner, and in taking the money needed to pay that fortune tax out of the company, that would trigger an additional 37.8% capital gains tax, which also would have to be removed from the company. And again, this is money that was meant to grow the company, not pay the personal tax of the owner. And if the invested amount is high enough, it is indeed possible to be left with a tax bill higher than what the owner has actually earned. In the original article, Stang provided a hypothetical example which stated that if her company had received even a tenth of the valuation and investment that this Swedish company did, she would get a personal tax bill of nearly 500,000. This article went viral in Norway, so much so that the Norwegian Treasury and Finance Department struck back and tried to quibble it away by pointing out some errors in her calculation resulting from the complexity of the system and other factors involved. Their main thesis, however, is that no, she wouldn't have to pay anywhere near 500,000 in fortune tax. Though in the fine print deeper into that response, it was stated that if her company was listed as a publicly traded company rather than a limited liability company, then her 500,000 estimate would have been closer to reality, kind of proving her point. Because the main point, which stands regardless of any attempted quibbling, is that Norwegian companies have a major disadvantage compared to pretty much any other compatible nations and economies, as the tax system massively disincentivizes any kind of investments and company growth that relies on investments in Norway. Because depending on a number of factors, as the founder of the crypto app Dune found out, you can quickly find yourself in a situation where all your earnings are eaten away in tax. Long term, this is a disaster for Norway for two reasons. First, because it impedes future job growth nationwide and employment opportunities. And second, because as all our industries were shut down and shipped off to mostly China, we were told that Norway was going to be a knowledge-based nation and sell that. But how can we sell knowledge when we disincentivize innovation? NHO, an interest organization for Norwegian enterprises, argues that the fortune tax has to be reduced and in the long run abolished completely, pointing out that when this tax is added to the revenue tax and other taxes, because it's the overall combo that is the killer here, then that means those who invest in Norwegian companies run the risk of paying more than what they earn in tax, unless the investments knock it out of the park. But since you don't know in advance what will knock it out of the park, this tax, when coupled with the revenue tax and all the others, disincentivizes any kind of investments into anything. The current government obviously did all this to collect more tax revenue to fund the massive welfare immigration no one voted for, on and offshore wind power that is doomed to fail, And yes, the development of games like Dustborn, the wokest game ever made. See our separate exposé for more on that, linked to in the description, as well as other assorted waste, and here and there some good things. However, when the current government implemented their current tax regime in 2022, the wealthy started leaving, and in order to prevent them from leaving and taking all that sweet, sweet tax money with them, the government responded with an urgent exit tax. This states that upon leaving Norway, you have to pay 37.8% of all values you have in Norway as per the date of moving. You can pay all of this upfront, in installments over 12 years, or at the end of the 12 years, but then with interest added to it. If some investment of yours tanked after you moved but before you paid the bill, doesn't matter, you still owe the tax based on the valuation from the date of departure, and on top of that, you still have to pay tax to Norway your first 2 years abroad. Needless to say, the exit tax has been massively criticized, with many pointing out that the ones who will suffer the most from it are regular people with regular real estate who for whatever reason wish to move country. The government response to this blowback is finding ways to make the exit tax even more extreme. So, how are the average Norwegians responding to all of this? Do they approve of their government's actions, both in this matter and everything else? Not as such, no. Recent polls indicate that if there were an election today, the Progress Party, which is the closest you will come to MAGA Republicans of the major Norwegian parties, would win in a landslide. The next election is still 1 year away though, so Elon Musk has plenty more time to retweet posts and videos about the craziness of the current Norwegian governance. Maybe some of you could point out this video to him. Also, do you like videos like these, even if they're a little bit on the side of what we usually cover? Let me know in the comments, and before you go, remember to protect your personal data with Incogni. Use our code MIDNIGHT at the link in the description, and you'll get 60% off an annual Incogni plan.